about 60 million tons of rock that are acidic waste generating material. And if you look at the map, you will see that both the open pit and the tailings facility are directly surrounded by vast acres of wetlands, both to the north, the south, and right next to the Menominee River. So any leakage from the tailings area or from the open pit mine would have a direct impact on the wetlands. The other major problem with wetlands, of course, not a problem with the wetlands, but the problem with the mine, is that the size of the mine is such a large area, 80 acres, 750 feet deep, which means that it intersects aquifers or water-bearing strata on the way down to the bottom of the open pit. When you excavate a mine that deep, you are going to affect the water level in the surrounding area. And of course, one of the key issues in the significant wetlands case that was just decided in favor of the environmental and tribal community is that the drawdown from dewatering the pit as the water enters the open pit will lower the water table, dry up a lot of wetlands, and create a significant loss of wetlands for the entire mine site. And one of the key issues in the wetlands challenge was how significant would be the damage to the wetlands. The company that was proposing the project, Aquila Resources, is a Canadian exploration company that tried to minimize the significance of the drawdown and the impact on wetlands, both from the exposure to acid waste, as well as the drawdown of the water table that dried up the wetlands around the mine site. The attempt of Aquila Resources to minimize the significance of the wetlands is simply one part of many attempts to minimize the overall impact of the mine and the public information available about the impact of the mine. This project it has a long history going back to 2003 when the project was first announced, when they had a partner by the name of Hudbay Minerals. Hudbay Minerals is an actual large Canadian mining company, in contrast to Aquila Resources, which has no experience in mining and which has very little financing for the project. In 2012, Hudbay Minerals pulled out of the project as a senior partner, leaving Aquila Resources as the majority owner of the project. And ever since then, Aquila has been dependent upon a constant infusion of cash to go through the permit process. And that has resulted in a strategy of continually trying to minimize the significant negative impacts of the mine so that it will go through the permit process. Beginning in 2015, between 2012 and 2015, the project was on indefinite hold because their senior partner, Hudbay Minerals, had pulled out of the project. In 2015, Aquila Resources emerged as the sole owner of the project, pushing ahead with the permit process, which involved not only getting a permit for wetlands, but also a mining permit, a pollution discharge permit for the discharge to the Menominee River, and also the tailings dam. All of those permits were contested and are being contested by the opposition. The beginning of the permitting process in 2015 was before Michigan's Department of Environmental Quality. And for the entire period of the challenge of environmental and local communities and the tribes to the permitting process was met by the arrogant opposition of the directors and administrators of the Department of Environmental Quality, who continually put down the public testimony which raised questions and concerns and reservations about the project, all of those citizen and tribal concerns were dismissed as basically irrelevant. The administrators kept telling the public that their opinions didn't matter, that the only criteria for evaluating whether the project was going to go ahead would be a strict reading of the scientific information that would determine whether the permit, whether the project met the permitting criteria of the Department of Environmental Quality. In other words, the public be damned. The only thing that counted was expert scientific testimony, which by definition could not be provided by the public. One of the major significant breakthroughs of the decision of Judge Poulter in January of this year, January 4th, was to acknowledge that the reason the permit was being overturned was because the Department of Environmental Quality ignored the scientific evidence. The Water Resources Division, which was the major scientific department within the Department of Environmental Quality that evaluated the wetland permit, unanimously disagreed with all of the company's pseudo-scientific findings, rejecting their models, which were designed to disguise the impact of the project rather than to scientifically present the actual impacts of the project on the wetlands. When the judge made that decision, he essentially said that because the Water Resources Division, the scientists in that Water Resources Division, those findings were ignored. They were overruled by the director of the Department of Environmental Quality, that the permit was invalid because when all the evidence was presented, the Water Resources Division came to the conclusion there was not enough information to evaluate the significant negative impacts of the project. But with the limited information they had, they knew that the project would violate the water quality criteria of the Water Resources Division and of course of the Clean Water Act. And therefore, when the permit was overturned, this was a major blow to the timetable for the company's permitting activity. They had been continually misleading the public with their false claims that they had all of the permits necessary to go ahead with the mine. In fact, all of the permits, when they were making that claim, were under contention in contested cases, like the contested case that resulted in the overturning of the wetlands decision. At the time they made those claims, there was no permit for the tailings dam, that they had not yet even applied for a tailings dam permit. And so part of their strategy for going ahead with the mining project was to convince the public that there was no point in opposing the project because all the decisions had already been made and they had no opportunity. That is, the public had no opportunity to intervene in that process. And everything we've learned from the judge's decision is that the public had a major role in both that wetland decision and of course in the larger decision about whether this mine is going to go ahead. In fact, it was quite remarkable during the testimony in the contested case that resulted in the wetlands being overturned. There was significant evidence that the public had submitted over 3,000 public comments on the wetlands permit, and that there were significant governments, 8 counties, townships, and tribes that had passed resolutions against the mining project, which were introduced as evidence of the lack of public support and public interest that is one of the criteria for generating a permit for the wetlands or for any other permit. The final thing I want to say about the significance of the judge's decision is that as soon as the decision was made, the lawyers for Aquila Resources asked the same judge to postpone for the next several months any further hearings on the already ongoing contested case on their mine permit. So right now we have a situation where not only is the wetland permit overturned, but the company is not confident right now in defending the mining permit, which of course is a necessary permit for the mine, let alone applying and defending a tailings dam permit. So overall, I would say that the opposition from the public, from environmentalists, and from the tribes has not only been taken into account, but up till this point, it has been a decisive factor in slowing down and perhaps stopping the entire permitting process. That's my contribution.
Thank you very much, Professor Gaddix. Our next speaker is Guy Ryder of the Menominee Tribe of Wisconsin, and he would like to talk about the interest that the tribe has in the area where the mine is being proposed. Mr. Ryder?
Yeah, cool. So, Horst, first I want to just say, thank you very much for UPEC for allowing me to be on this panel and discuss a little bit of some of our issues with this mine. Second thing is I don't speak for our tribe. Our chairman is our chairwoman is the single person who has the voice of our tribe. I am the executive director of a community organization by the name of Minneconnekim, which resides on the Menominee Reservation. So I wanted to, for just a couple seconds, that we recognize the fact that this fight may not necessarily be over, but it definitely is a big win for our water and our river that many of us know, many of us have relationships with. Some going back thousands of years, others, maybe even obviously newer than that. But just a couple seconds just to give a little bit of a thanks, and then I'm gonna jump back in. So this, as some of you may or may not know, the Menominee Indian tribe is the longest living inhabitants of Wisconsin and of this area they call Upper Michigan. We've been here a lot longer than any other tribe. Our oral history that goes back thousands and thousands of years goes back to the very mouth of the Menominee River. In our language, they call that Minikani Sepe. They call that beautiful river. But that's the birthplace of our tribe. And there's this beautiful story that is probably about a 3-day long story that I'm not going to tell tonight. I was thinking about it in the beginning, but I was persuaded not to. I know Kathleen would probably pinch me somehow virtually through the screen, so I'm not going to do that. But the other thing I wanted to talk about is the tribe has a long storied history. It's thousands of years old. There's no way I can fit it into what we're talking about tonight. You're going to have to rely on grandfather Google. Just type in the Menominee Indian Tribe of Wisconsin and you'll find plenty of information, who we are, what we're about, where we come from. So I'm not going to spend too much time on that. But other than that, our tribe has been around a long time. They refer to this river as the Menominee River because of us. So one of the other things too I wanted to recognize is the Front 40 group, who is very active, and Ron Henriksen and that group that was very active in this for a very long time. I think he said 17 years, which is incredible. I always ask him about how many times has the Bears won the Super Bowl in the 17 years, but I don't know. He never seems to have an answer. But we're not going to go there now. So I wanted to just recognize them and the work that they put in, and it was an extensive job they did, and I'm always grateful to what they put in. So obviously, the location of this mine is located right on, our antiquity as a nation, as a tribe. We have 24 known cultural sites that are rated within that area. 3 known burial mound groups that have been studied since the 50s. I believe there was something like 22 bodies that were taken out of those mounds in the 50s. We have since got quite a few of them back. We're still in the process of getting some of those grandmas and grandpas and aunties, uncles of ours home. And we will rebury them here on our reservation, so they'll have a place to rest and won't have to worry so much about this type of operation. So our involvement in mine specifically, was really based on that of protecting our river. This river knows everything about us as a nation, and we know everything about it. It has helped us to survive for thousands and thousands of years. We stood on the shoulders of that beautiful river and on the shores of that river, and when the threat came, something like this, we definitely wanted to jump in and do what we can. Upon this whole battle, I've been involved in probably the last 9 years or so. In opposition to this, we've done a tremendous amount of work. Some of that is documented in Grandfather Google too, so I'm sure you can see that too. But one of the things I wanted to make sure everybody on this call understands is that, it's times like this that, like I said earlier, it may not be the end of this project, and I'm sure there's still going to be work to be done, but this is a significant win. And all of you folks that are in the environmental fight and justice, you absolutely know how important a win is and how rare it can be in capitalism. There's such an ugly word in capitalism, and it's called enough. But we definitely, applaud the Judge Poulter's decision. This doesn't stop our involvement. Like Dr. Geddes had mentioned, the tribe is still suing them and contesting their mining permit. There's still a lot of work we can do. I think we keep the pressure on, and hopefully we can stop this thing from happening. But it's so very important, when you look at the place of this location of this mine, it's to say it any other way, I guess, is I don't have the words for it, other than the fact that this is really like the last that we have of our untouched areas of our history. The rest has been developed, it's been bulldozed, it's been dug up, and it's been built upon, and there's not many places you can go in this area and find our footprints, to see our ancestors that lived on this land for 10,000 plus years. You could go there and still see, the beautiful prehistoric garden beds that still reside there, and that's been untouched for 1,200 years. Those are so important to us, that they give us a little bit of a window to understand how our people were growing food in such a high climate, in such a cold climate. And not only that, but growing it during a time where there was significant weather upheavals and climate change. Those types of questions and answers, is something that can help us and guide us in the where we are today. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to look out your window and spend some time out in the woods to understand that, our climate is changing pretty rapidly, and there's some not so good things ahead of us if we continue down the path in which we're going. Many things we did. We did a beautiful water walk. I know, Horst, that I probably got a time clock somewhere, or even if Evan, if you want to give me a thumbs up when I should wrap this up, just let me know. They told me that I had an hour to talk, so I don't know if that's what everybody's expecting, but I'm just kidding. But anyway, so there's a lot of things, that we wanted to do, while we wanted to bring to this particular fight, our protection, however you want to look at it. The very first thing we wanted to do was reconnect with that river. And we wanted to let that river understand what we were willing to do to protect it. And upon that, those actions, when we did that water walk, we walked from our reservation, we walked right up to that mine site, and it was 126 miles. It was all downhill. So they told me, but it really for surely wasn't. But it was such a spiritual moment because we didn't carry signs and we weren't chanting or yelling anything. We were simply communicating with the natural world and allowing that water to understand our commitment, again, to it and what we're willing to do. And it was so very beautiful. And I don't know how much time I got left, but I wanted to just leave you a little bit with one of my grandmother, Josephine Mandamin, who's the original Mother Earth water walker. She has since passed now. She's been, this is her second year that she's been gone to the spirit world. But she is the original Mother Earth water walker. She walked around all 5 Great Lakes. And we have walked from all 4 waters. We walked from the Atlantic Ocean, we'd walk from the Pacific, we'd walk from the Gulf of Mexico, we walked from the Arctic, all the way down in each direction. So she's done a lot of walking. She said she walked through 2 hips and about 10,000 pairs of Nikes. You know, she was in her 60s, you know, when she started, and she was a really good motivation for me and somebody that I hold very close to my heart. And you know, the only way I guess I can thank her is by continuing on to walk for the water, protect the water, and do what we can. But during that walk, like I was talking about, there was a moment in there where, believe it or not, I got tired. And she had recognized that I had gotten tired. And she had said, "Nephew, I want you to jump into my car," she said. And I thought, oh, Grandma's going to give me a scolding, or I did something wrong, or, you know, I kind of went to that place with it. But she sat me down and she said this to me, and it's something that I really, really keep close to me, and I use it in a motivation even today in all the things that I'm involved in and things that I'm doing. But she said, "You know, nephew," she says, "as you sit here," she said, "I want you to look out that window." She said, I want you to realize that, you know, you're walking for all those people that can't get up here and walk." She said, I want you to understand that you're here for all those ones that are maybe sick or are you know, handicapped or even in jail. She said, "You know, you're here, you're walking for them." She said, "You're walking for all those ones that are waiting to come to this earth." She said, "Generations from now, you know, you're walking for them." She said, "You're walking for all those elders that had passed through here at one time and are no longer here." She said, "You're walking for them." She said, "I want you to remember that you're walking here for those animals, all those little microorganisms in the water, the birds, the plants." She said, "They can't come to these meetings and they can't write comments, and they for surely can't fit their comments into 3 minutes, you know, or do any of those things." And she said, "You know," she said, "I always want you to remember, nephew," she said, "I always want you to remember to be like water." And she said, "You know, when water stops and it's blocked and it stays stagnant," she said, "it starts to grow bacteria and it gets dirty." She said, "Nephew, I want you to be like water, always be like water." And you know, it was after that, like, tremendous, I wouldn't say guilt trip, but, you know, like, tremendous advice. I probably could have walked from, you know, there all the way to, you know, to the ocean, as motivated as I was. But it was that simple thing, you know, that our Dr. Geddix and I and others, you know, were traveling all around this state, you know, and giving talks, and a lot of times it was for free, a lot of times it was on our own time, and sometimes, you know, it'd be late at night, and I'd be on the road by myself, and I would think to myself that, you know, I want to be home with my kids, and I want to be home with my partner, and I would feel like everything I'm doing, maybe it's all in vain, maybe it's you know, not going to happen, and I'm doing this for nothing. And I have all those types of thoughts, and then her words would come back to me. Her words would echo in my mind, and I would wipe the tears away from my eyes, and I would remember what's really truly important in this world. And I'm so very thankful to have encountered so many beautiful people along this journey, and each and every one of you that are on this call that take the time out of your day to talk about these things and to advocate for our earth. I'm so very grateful, and I appreciate the time here, and I hope that you got a little bit out of this talk. I could have probably talked specifics and power mapping and organizing and all those things, but I just wanted to speak from my heart and tell you a little bit about what's going on in this heart of mine. So, Waiwana, thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I think this is really gives people an idea of the human face of what happens if the land that you cherish has been trampled upon, and then also to have a company come in and do further serious damage. And so thank you very much for all that. And I just wanted to remind people, if you have questions, feel free to put them into the chat. We'll answer them probably towards the end of the session. And but we want to make sure that you understand what's going on in all of this work that's been done. Our next speaker is Dale Burry, and Dale is the head of the Save the Menominee Coalition. And this is a group that started several years ago and has gained a lot of steam and has been moving ahead along with the tribe to stop the company from getting the mine started. And I think Dale can give us a good idea of what they've been doing over the last few years to achieve that goal. Dale?
Thank you, Horst. My name is, excuse me, my name is Dale Burry, and my wife, Leah Jane, is my environmental partner, and she's over here. She still takes shorthand, which is almost an unheard of talent anymore, but her little hand is all wrinkled up from taking so many notes. But when actually my wife and I we were professional musicians and in the music industry in Nashville, Tennessee. And we retired and moved up to, we are just across the Menominee River into Wisconsin, and at a little bitty burg called McAllister. And when we decided to build our dream retirement home for relocation, when we came up and we bought the property, we heard about the mine, but it was like dormant. So, oh yeah, the mine, well, it isn't going anywhere. Well, no sooner said that we started building and investing our entire life savings in our home. Excuse me. And all of a sudden, then there's articles that were appearing throughout the newspapers and media about this Aquila resources coming to our area. So little by little, I'd learn a little more. And we went to some cell groups that were gathering. And what I noticed was that they'd all get together and reminisce about, well, my grandpa owned this riverfront property for 100 years already, and we just can't bear to see this be spoiled by a mine that might take 6 or 8 years and then spoil it for the rest of eternity. So the more I learned about it, I thought, well, we're gonna start an organization and see where it goes, and see if we're very reliant upon God Himself, and we thought, well, we'll do what we can, and God will do the rest. So we started. Actually, Leah Jane and I, we borrowed $2,000 on our home equity loan to start the coalition to save the Menominee River. And little by little, we had a few meetings, and then things started taking shape. It was organized in April of 2017. And little by little, we gained more momentum and more, the whole operation runs on volunteers. There isn't anybody that gets a nickel for their work. It's a passion that lives within our hearts to help and help sustain and help push forward the environmental concerns, you know, for everybody. And it isn't, as you can tell, you know, I'm the gray-haired guy here. So I'm not going to be around that long, but my kids are, and my grandkids are, and I want that for them. So we started the coalition to save the Menominee River. We do have we actually organized with a corporation, a nonprofit 501c3. I have relied on what I call my mentors. These are the people that teach me, and that is Dr. Geddix, Kathleen Heidemann, and a Guy Ryder has taught us. And I see that Dr. David Chambers is on the call, and we rely on his expertise a lot as well. And Ron Hendrickson, you know, all the people that were here already doing what we attempted to do. So they basically showed us the ropes. And we have participated in parades. We've done bridge walks. We've created public advocacy. We've been fortunate. We've been able to establish some grants. We get private donations. We had a situation here just this past winter now, where if you've never heard of the video channel Meat Eaters, and Tim Landwehr from Tight Lines Fly Fishing in De Pere, Wisconsin. Tim actually brought this gentleman up the Menominee River for a fishing trip. And the guy asked him, he says, well, what is all this that I see along the river? What is the coalition? What is Save Our River? What's all this about? And so Tim told him, so, well, there's a Canadian company that wants to put this mine 150 feet from the river. And he said, it's just going to destroy with the acid mine drainage and the air pollution and what have you. And that's all I really talked about on the, and he said, well, if you'd like to help, you know, find Coalition on Google and see if you can send a donation. We received an enormous amount of donations from this, from the Meat Eaters program, even a $20 donation from somebody in Australia, because that video aired on the internet. So, you know, the outreach of the internet is beyond me. I'm just surprised at the outreach that you can achieve with the internet. And look at us tonight. We sit with how many on this call, and we're all from everywhere in the world. As I look across, Dick Dragowitz is from Chicago. He's with the coalition. Our vice president, Dave Barron, he's from Oconto Falls, Wisconsin. How could we ever do this before? So what an opportunity we have to reach out and partner with other environmental supporters. Just recently, well, this morning, as a matter of fact, Guy and Dr. Geddix host a conference call every other week. This morning, we had members from the Michigan Environmental Council. Horst was on from your organization. We had Ron James from the Wolf River Committee, and little by little, it's my passion to bring these people together, because we all share the common thread of protecting the environment that God has created, and we are in charge. We are charged with that mission because, I mean, it just says that, believe me.
In the Bible.
In the Bible, yeah. So it's our responsibility to care for this earth. And something else that I had a great opportunity to do in all my years in music and what have you, I've never had the opportunity ever to cross paths with Native American tribes. And what I have found out is that their culture and their beliefs. I admire that. They have a down deep passion for everything in this world. And I really admire, Guy, I really admire what you folks do. I admire the culture. I truly do. So thank you for that. So anyway, we have about 250 people on our immediate email list. We have a Facebook page, which is Coalition to Save the Menominee River. Because we're a 501c3, we cannot indulge in political activity, but we also have partners that have the Save the Menominee River page, and they are not a 501c3, so we are able to get away with a little bit with them. But nevertheless, the more that I understand the environmental side of it, we rely on our lawmakers to create laws and the political scene to circumvent any environmental emergencies. And sometimes we get a listening ear, and sometimes, like Dr. Geddix mentioned in his presentation, sometimes they just say, well, that's not important. You know, you're not important. You're the public, you're not important. Well, I still feel that this country, from what we have left of our country, it was for the people, by the people, or by the people, for the people, and the power of the people. And so I stand on that premise. So, so the coalition is alive and well. We were able to retain the legal services of Ted Warpinski with the firm Davis and Coulthau out of Milwaukee. We're very pleased with Ted's performance. They have, of course, during the contested case, we were one of the litigants, and Earth Justice, representing the tribe, was the other litigant, and Tom Borner, an adjacent property owner. He's not an attorney, but he really should be, because this guy comes up with a lot of legal angles. And even Judge Poulter, during the testimony, we were there for 19 days for the testimony, and Judge Poulter said, "Mr. Borner, you should really become an attorney," because he was so good at it. But anyway, these three entities walked into the courtroom, and lo and behold, yes, it's victorious, and we will revel in our victory. But the game is not over yet. You know, we're going to move forward. Aquila has basically three options that they could employ if they choose. One of them being the Tribunal of Michigan. They can appeal to the three-member tribunal for reversal of the decision. They could actually go back and try to rebuild their original application to resubmit. And then the last thing is they could start right from scratch and start over.
Or they could go home.
Or they could simply go back to Canada. Yeah. So which is something we hope. But we will, let the coalition stand. It's going to be around. We're not going anywhere. Our attorneys are ready to take to the next level if need be. And thank you to the Menominee tribe for the Earth Justice jumping in there, and also on the amendment to the 632 law. That's a very important facet of this whole operation. So together, united is a big word, and united is where we have to be to push forward. So Horst, I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you for everybody being on the call, and thank you for all of our coalition volunteers I see on the call. So thank you, God bless, and good night.
Thank you very much, Dale. That certainly is an inspiring story in terms of how you got this thing started from basically nothing. And yeah, and and the point is that you ended up with a great victory, and as you say, it's not over, and hopefully somewhere along the line they will give up or go broke. And so we don't have that problem anymore. But the point is, if the ore body is there, we have to remain vigilant. I think that's really, really a key factor when we're looking at this. You know, because there are other mining companies out there. Climate change looks for more metals, and we never know if we're going to have that threat again over our heads. But you know, at this point, I'm very happy with what you guys have been able to achieve, and so we'll go on next to Kathleen Heidemann, who is our guru of all things Aquila Back 40, and she will give us the lowdown on why Aquila did not win this case with the state.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Everybody good? All right.
Yes.
So,
Great.
great, thanks. I'm going to start a slideshow here. So now you all disappeared and I don't feel so nervous. Can everyone still see the slides that I'm projecting right now?
I'm not seeing the slides yet, Kathleen.
Not yet.
Oh, you're not seeing the slide? Oh, I might have to switch let me see, share screen on that. Desktop 2, share.
Your slide came up for 1 second.
Great.
Somebody yesterday, last time, told me you have to go up and share your screen again after you've pulled it up. There you go.
Everybody
Okay,
good?
got it.
There we
Okay.
go.
So I
Good.
just want to start with an image showing the location of the project approximately. This is just so you all have a sense of the area. What you're seeing is Green Bay.
Kathleen, I think you'll need to reshare. I think it's on the slideshow right now instead of the image, so you might need to switch over to that.
Okay.
Here we go.
That fix-
Perfect. Thank you.
Oh, sorry, other screen. So I just wanted to show an overview so that everybody had a sense of the project location. Horst reminded me not everyone is aware. So what you're seeing on the blue side is Green Bay going up into Lake Michigan. And what you're seeing below the orange arrow is the approximate location of the mine area, the project area. And below that is Shaky Lakes. And so this is right next to it is a little dotted line. That's the boundary between Wisconsin and Upper Michigan. So interesting detail is, you know, the boundary line between the state of Michigan and the state of Wisconsin there is because it's the Menominee River. It's actually what's brought us all together as opposed to divided us. It's not much of a boundary. It's more of a connecting line. So in terms of understanding this decision, I wanted to start with the wetland regulations in the state of Michigan. And we're only talking about Michigan because of the way this mine, even though it's situated right on the edge of the state of Michigan, right on the Menominee River, we're having this project permitted under the authority of the state of Michigan, which has delegated authority from the federal government for wetland law. We're one of 2 states with that situation. The importance of wetlands, this is according to EGLE. And when I say EGLE, it's the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy. They changed their name since the permitting process began. So if I accidentally say EGLE or DEQ, it's the same thing. So what are wetlands and why are they important? Michigan's wetland statute provides for the protection of our wetlands. And there are a variety of types of wetlands, but the protection of wetlands is what's helping preserve our watersheds and our groundwater supplies, our recharge, and assisting with preservation of water quality. And the benefits of wetlands, and in addition to everything else, it's their vital role in recreation, tourism, economy, and what we call wetland services. But Michigan has lost over 50% of its original wetlands, drained or filled since the beginning of the state of Michigan. So that makes wetlands that much more important. So in terms of the wetland protections, the laws that are governing this project, Part 303 wetland protection. Part 303 is the wetland law that this project was being permitted under. And you cannot fill within a wetland. You cannot dredge, remove soil or minerals from a wetland. You cannot construct, operate, or maintain any use or development in a wetland. Can't put your garage there. You can't build a building there. You can't build an open pit mine there. You can't drain surface water from a wetland. You can't fill in a wetland basically unless you have a permit. And in order to get the permit, you have to prove certain things. You have to look at whether there's public and private need for the activity, whether there's an available, feasible, and prudent alternative that could accomplish the same benefit, and the extent and impermanence of the beneficial or detrimental effects of the proposed activity, the probable effects on recognized historic, cultural, scenic, ecological, recreational values, the size of the wetland, proximity to waterways. These are all important things that the law requires the state of Michigan consider. And so either the proposed activity is dependent on being in a wetland, which a mine is not, or a feasible and prudent alternative does not exist, and that you have to do a full review of the prudent and feasible alternatives in order to determine that. And the applicant has to prove that. That there is nothing that is feasible and prudent other than that specific spot. So our key concerns going into this, first of all, wetlands in this area, Aquila seemed to be playing a game with how they were referring to their wetlands. Some wetlands they were calling upland wetlands, and some wetlands they were calling valley bottom wetlands. These are not regulatory terms. And the upland wetlands, they said, were perched and above the groundwater. And most wetlands in Michigan are not perched and above the groundwater. They're connected to groundwater. And most wetlands are fed by both surface water and groundwater, depending on the season. It depends on the season what portion of their waters is coming from groundwater recharge or surface water runoff. In the case of these upland wetlands, it's kind of a unicorn that Aquila invented so that they could say that they were not connected to groundwater. And so if they did things on the site that screwed up the groundwater, there'd be no impact on these wetlands. In fact, sometimes they said that part of a wetland was an upland wetland and part of it was a downland wetland. In other cases, you can see the orange, the pink line at the upper corner. They tried to say that the wetland impacts ended at a sharp straight line, which wetlands don't like to do. And then they only inferred small areas of impact beyond that line in only a few of the examples of all the wetlands that cut off at their project boundaries. And then you can also see that the wetlands shape changed color from dark green when they were within the mine site to like a kind of a greenish pebbly color as they extend beyond the wetland, beyond the project boundary, beyond Aquila's ownership. And the boundary line is irrelevant to wetlands. Wetlands don't care where you put your fence or your imaginary property boundary. So what you have to understand is the entire wetland watershed. Each little wetland has its own area that feeds it, some from surface water and some from groundwater recharge. And those two areas are different sizes. And the company is not authorized to impact groundwater dependent wetlands that are beyond their mine site. They can only impact wetlands and get permits to impact wetlands on their own mine site, not on somebody else's property. Wetland impacts for this project are significant. Here's a comparison of wetland permits that are in general in the country. Wetlands are permitted through the federal government. And so to get a wetland permit to impact or destroy wetlands, you're getting a federal permit. And you can see that the arrow is pointing toward like the 25 to 50 acre corner of the screen. And this is the general number of permits that have been issued over the period 2010 to 2014, showing how many permits are given for projects of that size to destroy wetlands. So this is a very large wetland impact and very unusual for a project to have that many impacts. It's considered serious. Here are the groundwater elevations for the site right now. So you can see the topography is kind of reflected in the groundwater elevations. It slopes down toward the river. The pink boundary is the active Aquila mine footprint. And here's what it will be when they have a big open pit mine, 750 feet deep, right next to the river. You can see that it'll be like the vortex caused by flushing your toilet. You have all those sharp little lines going together as the water will be going down into the mine pit and then being pumped out and treated for discharge. And the wetland impacts from the mine pit and the facility design, you can see on this image, the gray area is contact water where they have to treat the water, collect it and treat it so that it doesn't contaminate everything, because there'll be a variety of minerals, metals, and acidic material from the acidic rock that they're going to be breaking up on the mine site. So all of the wetland impacts are highlighted in different colors. They're calculating this one will be filled and this one will be built over and this one will be drawn down because of groundwater. But this is a complex site, and what you can see is they're hitting wetlands on all sides of the project. On the east, on the northeast, northwest, on the west side, on the south. So they're beheading wetlands. These are wetlands that go elsewhere. And again, you can see their lines all end, especially that bottom one where you have a big green, dark green area of direct, and then all of a sudden it shifts to like offsite. So here is a wetland map viewer. This is state of Michigan wetlands data combined with the mine site to just show you the extent of those wetlands that leave the mine site in all directions. They're really the heads, the tips of much larger wetland complexes. And, you know, every map tells some truth and tells some lies because of the way it's cropped or what it shows or doesn't show. And in this case, you know, almost all of the maps that we had to look at to understand the project eliminate the larger wetland context. And a lot of them didn't even accurately show the river, but you can see the river proximity is adjacent directly to the mine operation on that side. And then you can also see a big yellow line extending like a tail off to the west. And that is a newly proposed utility road, utility and corridors, a utility and transportation corridor that they added on to the project, and that goes off to the northwest. So I'm not going to get into this right away, but the groundwater drawdown, the flushing toilet image, that relates to this underground mine that they're putting in. The open pit would lead to an underground mine. They're only asking the state of Michigan for permits related to the open pit mine, but they're telling all their investors and regulators in Canada and local officials that they intend to do an underground mine that's integrated with the open pit. As soon as they get down to that level, then they can veer off and put in on two portal operations to get into the ore body that extends from the mine. And in order to fulfill the requirements for the wetland permit, they had to do a feasible and prudent review of alternatives. So they put together this list showing that they had a lot of different alternatives. I highlighted the top line because you can see in that one, they suggested that one option was only underground mining. And then of course they could eliminate that because that's not economically viable because it would go through a bunch of the other parts of the ore body. And then they had number two was offsite ore processing and disposal concept. But for that one, they only considered shipping the ore an enormous distance away to an undisclosed potential open pit from a historic mine project that they had not identified, where like there might be an old mill that they could use. And they were kind of imagining, you know, the way Eagle ships its mine to the Humboldt pit and the Humboldt mill, which they're reusing for their project. But they said that that would just be impossible. It wouldn't be economically viable because it'd be so far to transport things to this imaginary spot that they hadn't identified. And then you can see the last item is the only one that's green. The highlight color green means it's the ideal layout. It's technically feasible. It's the one that they want to build. And then magically, that's the only one in the entire list that's economically viable for them. The thing to remember when you're thinking about the feasible alternatives analysis required under the wetlands law is you're not only looking at projects that are the most fiscally profitable for the company. You also have to consider things that might cost more, but would avoid wetland damages. And the state law requires that review. And profit and cost are not the primary concerns in that review. So since we didn't see a real feasible alternative in their application, we suggested one. We looked at the land that they had said that they owned, and the mineral rights too. They control the mineral rights for all of the area in yellow, which are mostly state-owned minerals, but they've leased them all. And sometimes the state of Michigan owns the surface, sometimes they have surface. It's a complex map, but they have leases in that entire area. And so it's immediately adjacent to the pink mine site boundary. And what we determined is a lot of the wetland impacts, you know, are due to the fact that they want to mine right next to the river in that open pit. And you can't perhaps move a mine because you know, mining companies will say we have to mine where the ore body is, but you can move almost every single other thing on that site. They've jammed in their waste piles, and they've jammed in their contact water basins, and they jammed in their ore treatment area and their shipping area and their waste rock storage area. So they don't have to do all that there. That's their decision. So we suggested that they just find a site that would be upland and not impacting wetlands immediately to the west. Immediately to the east of that project area. And we developed that as a feasible alternative that was not considered, and submitted that in our comments to the state of Michigan. In the contested case, the judge agreed with a lot of us. I know the Menominee, Save the Menominee Coalition felt that this administratively complete application should never have been brought to the public. I believe the coalition argued this, and certainly we thought that. The application was thousands of pages long, and yet it was administratively incomplete. They didn't put in everything you needed to understand, review, and make a wise decision about this permit. And so even though it's really big, even though there were thousands of pages, the judge said it is the content of the application that matters. Otherwise, an applicant may attempt to flood the agency with a voluminous application, merely hoping to take advantage of a short statutory time frame. Sure enough, the concerns that we raised and that others raised made it all the way to the findings of fact and conclusions of law that the judge issued. And so he found, and these are the 5 main points that he determined. 1 is an activity that results in the draining of groundwater connected to surface water that causes a draining of surface water from a regulated wetland requires a permit. 2, for a Part 303 application to be administratively complete, it must contain a reliable identification of wetland impacts. 3, that a conditional permit that requires an applicant to provide evidence after the fact to satisfy the permitting criteria is not permissible in the state of Michigan under the law. And then 4, that the conditional permit that was issued in this case is invalid as currently written. And then 5, because Aquila failed to demonstrate that there are no feasible and prudent alternatives, wetland mitigation is not possible in this case, because you can only offset once you know what you're offsetting. And so the application for the permit is denied. And so I'm just going to break down those 5 points individually just to understand just a little bit more. An accurate groundwater model is needed to determine the wetland impacts. They presented in their permit a groundwater model that was deeply flawed, that we had first seen in their mining permit application. And the state employees who reviewed it said that it was sort of incomprehensible. There are a lot of problems with it, a lot of assumptions put in to make the facts come out of, to make the results come out the way that the applicant wanted. So the Water Resources Department determined that the amount of indirect impacts from pit dewatering was underestimated, and the total probable effects are unknown. And all foreseeable wetland impacts have to be identified. That was the second finding. Well, Aquila, after the permit and the public comment period had already passed, Aquila was suggesting they had a late idea of using adaptive management. They were proposing that they could pump river water into the wetlands that had problems to offset any unknown acres of wetland impacts from their mine project dewatering. And the judge said, no, you can only get a permit to begin with if you have identified all of the impacts. You can't use these kind of solutions like wetland augmentation to avoid having to identify them. They wanted to provide a range of potential impacts, like somewhere between 11 or 17 and 40 acres of wetlands. And rather than doing augmentation or adaptive management, the judge said you have to do a complete assessment of what your impacts are going to be, including the indirect impacts. You have to do monitoring to look at those problems in the permit, as opposed to just solve them after the fact because you didn't adequately describe them ahead of time. And all foreseeable wetland impacts identified also includes the way that the permit was put together to be approved is kind of a strange story. It looks like the company went to EPA when the EPA had some objections about the amount of unknown, unpinned down, unquantified wetland impacts from this project. And EPA said that they wanted the company to resolve it with the state of Michigan. And they thought that the state of Michigan could resolve it by putting in additional conditions that they could meet it after the fact, rather than meeting it ahead of time when you're applying for the permit and demonstrating what your wetland impacts are going to be. They thought it could be met by putting in little promises in your wetland permit that would say, like, we promise to give you some data later. We promise to revise our wetland modeling program. We promise to review this or check the parameters later. And so basically the judge said, this is not possible. You can't do this under state law and Part 303. You have to demonstrate it first. And the conditional permit issued in this case is invalid as written. And in fact, what they ended up doing was, so the state of Michigan was prepared to deny the permit because there were all these problems and lack of data, and the wetland impacts kept going up every time they looked at it. And instead, through a kind of still unresolved change at the last minute, the director of the state environmental quality department directed her staff to issue the permit. And then they issued the permit by putting in dozens of special conditions, sort of greasing it up to get it through the chute, with special conditions kind of making it slide through at the last minute. And that's not how permitting is supposed to work in Michigan. Otherwise, what is the permitting process for? Like, you could just promise to do it all later. You don't have to demonstrate anything to get a permit. Just, you know, shake hands and promise that you'll figure it all out after you get your permit. And particularly important for us is the idea that evidence has to be in the record, not the promise of evidence to be provided in the future. Again, I find it really extraordinary that the judge said this in this decision, because this is what we're saying. We can't evaluate permits if the information isn't there. So otherwise you'd be bypassing the public participation that is preserved in the public process of permitting. And so the documents that were submitted as part of the application were not complete. They didn't give us the full picture, and that bypasses public participation. And so the permit that would be based on that is also a bypass of public participation. And finally, number 5, because Aquila failed to demonstrate that there are no feasible and prudent alternatives, they cannot wetland mitigate. And that's, they were gonna save some wetlands somewhere else on the Menominee River that they said would offset all of the wetlands that they were gonna impact at the mine site. And because they didn't look at all prudent and feasible alternatives, they narrowly defined a few potential feasible alternatives. They didn't look at the one that was right next to them that we suggested, and they did not look at alternatives that actually reduce their wetland impacts. In fact, every alternative that they looked at seemed to increase their wetland impacts, which is not how the alternatives analysis is supposed to work. And so this is what the judge had to say about that. In many cases, addressing feasible and prudent alternatives, the applicant's initial site plan has the most impacts to resources. During the processing of the application, it is common for the applicant to reduce the wetland impacts sought in the original site plan. In this case, however, the amount of wetland impacts increased with each modification of Aquila's site plan. Aquila did not provide evidence of how it had redesigned its site plans with a view toward reducing wetland impacts. It considered 3 site plans, each of which increased in wetland impacts. So thus, the record does not contain evidence of feasible and prudent alternative locations and methods. And so he finds against Aquila on that point as well. And I'm overjoyed with the details of this decision. I hate to tell everybody on a beautiful evening in Upper Michigan, you should all be like skiing under the moon or cross country snowshoeing or something. But I'm going to tell you to go download that judge's decision and read it, because it's a page turner and we know how it ends. So it's fun to read. All right, I think that's all I have to say. Yeah, we don't know what'll happen. We don't know what'll happen next. Yeah.
Go back to, I think it was a screen number 3 or screen. It was your picture of the mind map with all the lines in it. It was like screen 3, screen 4. It was back.
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
Pull that one up again.
Okay.
Keep going back. You had one that was better. Was it in the beginning? Let's try. See, I can't touch it. Keep going back. I don't see it in your. Well, there, that one. Go up. That one there. Okay, for the folks, it looks like the numbers I'm. No, go back to the other one. Okay. No, keep going down. You were on it. Go up one. That one. Okay. Now these lines here are lines. Oh, you're off of it.
I think there's just a little delay. So I'm gonna go into it, and then you want one above that one?
Yeah, I think it was. I don't know. I can't see a page. Try
is
page.
Is it the flushing toilet?
It could be.
Is
13, I think it is.
Okay.
No, not that one. Go to 12, page 12.
Okay.
Okay, we're delayed. There, that one, whatever that page number is.
Okay.
Okay, in the language of land, there's the Mercator charts, polygonic charts, and the topographical charts. These blue lines are kind of showing which way water is shedding
Yeah.
within the mine site and from the mine site.
Yeah.
But these numbers, these little numbers here, it looks like I'm reading 680 feet. What those little numbers mean is feet above sea level.
Yeah.
But in all those little lines, so back about the 3 o'clock position, you see how there's circle lines in there that get further and further and further apart.
Yeah.
Usually those denote a 10-foot drop in elevation. So if you're dropping, and I don't see a scale here for feet, but let's say, you know, that's a quarter of a mile. So it's going to be around, that's going to be around 1,300 feet. 1,300 feet is about 6 acres of land. The average person in the 3 o'clock section of this drawing, you're going to be taking a step for about you're going to be taking steps between 65 and 75 steps for every acre that you walk. So that's denoting kind of a flat land. But as you go to the 12 o'clock or the center, and then you're heading towards 9 o'clock, those lines are still 10-foot drops, but you can see how steep it gets. So the greater the distance in that land, because the land is going to talk to your feet. If the land is higher up, your feet stay dry. If the land drops a little bit for standing water, surface water, your feet get wet. As the surface water accumulates through natural organic ways of weather, it'll shed down to the groundwater, which sheds to the perennial streams, which sheds to the actual little rivers that we have out in the woods. And that's where this is going to carry the acid mining chemical with it into an unknown area. So if we have a high wet season, starting from where the lines are real far apart, that's where water is going to puddle. If we went to the 9 o'clock direction, where those lines are getting closer together, you're going to start developing little streams in the woods with little rapids. And what it's going to do, based on the temperature of the water, the depth of the water, so in the springtime, that's going to travel real fast, or a summer storm, and the temperature of the water, it's going to take that high pH with it and just keep on going until it hits the Menominee River, and which is going to gain another temperature and carry it right into the Bay of Green Bay. So in this 9 o'clock area, you're looking at a cliff, but now you had another map which kind of showing the depth of the mine in it. If you could find that one. And it's going to be someplace around that's 13. So it's going to be someplace around 12, 10, maybe page 12 or 10. I can't see your index column that you had on the left. Nope, it's before that. But that's a good idea there, but it doesn't show the rings to the mine. It was you said it was kind of a vortex going down into the mine.
Yeah. Okay. Here.
If you could find that one. Yeah. Before I could see your index on the left, that one there, I can use that one. So here they're showing the center of the mine, and before you were saying they were squeezing the tailings into a parameter where it just didn't fit, and the pilings are going higher and higher, and they're just trying to cram numbers by using percent. Well, right here, when each one of those rings, I don't know the scale of this map, but here it shows kilometers. And so every one of those rings considered 10 feet. So if you're cross country skiing and those rings are real close together, you're going to be going downhill real fast. But if those rings are real far apart and you're cross country skiing, you're going to have a real nice country stride in the woods, and it's going to be beautiful. But this water is going to puddle in where the rings are farther apart. The water is going to puddle, and then it's going to go into it's going to go from the standing water to the groundwater to the perennial streams, which Wisconsin is trying to get rid of that, I think, because of the language in this mine. I don't know that for sure. But then you talked about the mine was making promises on a permit. In a business license, you don't make promises. You write your plan out, and that's what you're going to adhere to, and you have bonding for that. But in this permitting process, a good one that I can think of, and it just happened over the last couple of months here, is where the mine promised the county, we're going to give you that 911 tower. We're not going to say it's going to work. We're just going to give you a tower. We're going to give you a rescue squad without telling you the policy, the license, and the reliability of a rescue squad. So all these promises are not promises that can be, I'm missing the word here, that they can keep. But
Mm.
in these maps, just remember when you're looking at them, the closer these lines are together, they denote a 10-foot drop in elevation. The further apart, the flatter the land. The closer together, you have cliffs. And you had some drawings in there with what you were saying.
Yeah.
It was a perfect lecture that you gave.
And the blue
Good job.
lines in this map, just to be super clear, the blue lines here and in the other map, those are referencing the drop in the topography of the groundwater, not the surface of the land. It's not
Yes.
the surface topography, but it's if
Yes.
you could just see where water moves and how high it is, you know, it moves and it's in different it's at different elevations across the mine site. The mine site has different elevations. The groundwater also has different elevations. So sometimes they relate
Yes.
to each other,
Yep.
sometimes not entirely, but they
Yes.
definitely get closer together as you get closer to the Menominee River. So, yep,
Yes.
thanks.
Yep. The blue
Yeah.
lines are from the hydrologist.
So do we have
Excellent job.
questions? Thank you. Do we have questions for any of the panelists here? I can open it up to everyone. I can just put on a, well, we can leave this generic slide up. Evan, do you want to be a moderator?
Yes, absolutely. We did have a comment here from Tom Wilson saying it should be remembered that the Flambeau mine failed at worst at the location used for storage of overburden, not the mine itself. Here we are seeing tailings and overburden being stored right next to the river, where it is most likely to impact the river. And we also have a comment. Yeah.
I was
And we also
just
have a
gonna
comment
point
from, oh, excuse me.
Oh, just because the tailings got mentioned, that's one of the things that everyone who cares about this project that's on the call, please stay tuned. We don't know what will happen with the tailings dam mine application, the tailings mine permit that they have to put together. The dam permit is currently under review. The tailings dam safety permit is the full title of it. The dam safety permit is dam safety permit is under review right now by the state of Michigan, and the very center of this image shows a big kind of ziggurat, a big giant square with many levels. That's their tailing management facility. It will be left on the site forever, and it'll be filled like a big jelly donut full of toxic material.
Kathleen, two quick questions, I think, so people are aware of this. Which direction does that ore body go if they would go underground?
It goes under the river.
Okay, so that would create many new hazards that they would have to meet conditions as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, they have not considered any of that, but one could hypothesize about the various problems. The ore body extends in two lobes at least, and both of them are on the west side of the project, one to the north-ish west and one to the southwest, but they would both head directly toward the river. And probably under it, they've already talked about that in their it does go under it, but they've talked about it to their advisors, but not to the general public or to the regulatory authorities.
And one final question for me is, has Aquila ever opened and run a mine before?
Evan, could you turn off the ability to draw on the screen? I'm not sure what's going on right now. There's some drawing happening.
I think that might be happening in yours. I'm not sure. We can, there is an annotation ability, but.
Oh, okay. I just wasn't sure. All of a sudden I was seeing lines.
Mm-hmm.
So Evan, any questions from our Facebook?
Yes, I just also like to add, we also had a question just for more detail, Kathleen. Do you have the official link to the judge's decision that we could post on here for people to read in full?
Yeah, it's in all of our press releases. We included a link so that everybody could read Judge Poulter's decision. Yep. I made it really short so that you can almost remember it, memorize it.
Well,
I just posted it on your chat.
Oh, great. Thanks.
I think that's the right one.
Thanks so much for the article, Michelle.
Thanks for your help with it.
On Facebook, we have a lot of support for our subjects, and thanks for everyone and what you're doing. We have another comment here from Susie Swanson saying, I find it ironic that the government spent millions downriver to remediate past pollution, our money, and they don't consider that forever is a long time. Their remediation is very time limited in light of the above. I think that's a very good comment. You know, I'd like to thank everyone here, you know, Guy Reeder, for reminding us that, you know, any wins for the land here are something that we can continue to celebrate forever, you know, whereas the mine itself will only last for a few years. The things that are mined will be thrown into landfills very quickly. Although this fight continues to go on. So thank you, Dale Beery, for reminding us that we'll have to continue to fight in order to continue to celebrate. The scale is just amazing. You know, this thing is just such a monster when you look at it from this perspective.
I just really want to give a big shout out to everyone with the tribal resistance and the great work of the Save the Menominee Coalition, because it's really inspiring. I feel like every mine project that gets proposed as a threat to our watersheds gets its own activists. They sow the seeds of their own destruction because the people who are going to be impacted are activated by the threat. So thank you all.
Thank you to our guest. You know, if you want to know what heroes look like, you just have to look at them. You know, that they are absolutely fantastic in the time and effort they've put into this, you know, as Guy pointed out. And Dale, you know, with starting from, you know, with the $2,000 to see what he could come up with. And it was just amazing. And Al Gaddix has done a great job in helping to let people know how bad this mining is. And you know, it's really important for us to appreciate the work that's been done. And if we could, you know, if we were in a hall, we would be able to applaud them. So I hope you can all silently applaud our heroes. So I think that's really great. So that's our program for the night, and we will be back in about the last week of March. What am I saying? Of January. I'm moving ahead. I'm trying to move winter ahead. So anyway, we're probably going to be on the 28th of January. So, but we'll get the word out, and so we wish you a good winter, and hopefully we'll get snow so you can actually do some skiing again, and enjoy the outdoors, and realize these are the people that help us keep those outdoors safe. Thank you. Good night.
Thanks.
Thank you for your help tonight.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Guy. Thanks, Al. Thanks, Dale.
Thank you all. We celebrate all of you.